like to go ahead and call the General Administration and Personnel Committee for the Village of Hoffman Estates, January 8th, 2018. May I have a roll call, please?
Chairman Arnett.
Present.
Vice Chairman Mills.
Present.
Trustee Stanton.
Present.
Trustee Newell.
Present.
Trustee Palafis.
Present.
Trustee Gata.
Present.
Mayor McLeod.
Present.
Thank you. We do have a quorum. If I can get the approval of minutes for December 11th, 2017.
So moved.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. We do have 3 new items under new business. Number 1 is request acceptance of cable TV monthly report.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any questions or? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Item number 2, request acceptance of human resources management monthly report.
So moved.
I'll second.
Any questions or? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Item number 3, request acceptance of legislative operations and outreach monthly report.
So moved.
I'll second.
Any questions or? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. President's report?
Nothing else, Trustee Arnett.
Thank you, Mayor. I see nothing in other or items in review. Can I have a motion for an adjournment?
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. We are adjourned.
Thank you. I'd like to call the Transportation and Road Improvement Committee for January 8th, 2018 to order. Secretary,
Chairman-
please call the roll.
Chairman Mills.
Present.
Vice Chairman Stanton.
Present.
Trustee Arnett.
Present.
Trustee Newell.
Present.
Trustee Palafis.
Present.
Trustee Gata.
Present.
Mayor McLeod.
Present.
Thank you. We have, need a motion to approve the minutes of the December 4th special meeting.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any changes or corrections needed? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Now I need a motion to approve the minutes of the December 11th meeting.
So moved.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any corrections for those? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. We have one item that tonight under old business, and that's the discussion of Alcoa Lane parking conditions. Staff want to start with this, or who's going to take it?
I will start off,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman. So in December, the proposed Alcoa Lane permit parking expansion area was presented at the committee, and the request was to do a survey of the residents both in the current permit area as well as the proposed expansion area. And that was undertaken with, and we received responses up until about January 5th, and those have been tabulated and incorporated into the staff memorandum. So the original parking area approved in 2006 is generally east of Washington, west of Spring Mill, Alcoa, portions of Alcoa and Berkeley, including Olive and Morton Street. Proposed area goes west all the way to Woodlawn, down to, excuse me, Berkeley, and adds about 3 times as many homes in the permit area as is currently in there. 183 homes in the proposed area, while there's 56 in the existing area. So the survey asked 2 simple questions. One, should the permit area be left unchanged, or should it be expanded to Woodlawn on the west? And parking permit hours, should they remain 2 to 5, which is current, or expanded from midnight to 6 a.m.? We sent the survey to all the residents, received about 43% response rate on that for both areas combined. The survey results, in the existing permit area, 39% of the residents responded. There's about 24 responses. 77% supported the expansion, and 73% supported the increase in the hours of the parking ban. In the expanded parking permit area, 44% of the residents responded, a bit higher than for the existing area. 52% supported the permit area expansion, 44% preferred no change, and 52% also supported the permit time change. And again, 37% preferred no change to the hours. The responses don't sum to 100%. Some people answered only the first question and not the second one, so that skewed the results just a tad. So there's, based on the responses, we presenting two different options. Option A, which is what was presented in December, which is the entire area from Washington to Woodlawn, as shown in the graphic. And then option B would exclude the 3 cul-de-sacs off of Berkeley. And some of those responses indicated that they really don't have a problem there and would not expect to have any overnight parking there that isn't related to the residences there. So the recommendation from staff would be to consider expanding the area with the hours and the geographic area to be determined by the committee, looking at either 2 to 5, midnight to 6, or something in between. We note that the 2 to 5 did seem to work in the current area, presenting the overnight parking. However, if there's a desire to expand those hours, obviously that could happen. And then for the actual geographic area, consideration to, should it be all of Alcoa, all of Baxter, all of Woodland, Western, how far south in Washington, all of Berkeley, and then the cul-de-sacs.
Joe, would you put the map back up? I think that will help. Thank you.
So if there's any questions or discussion.
All right, well, once we get the board, we'll ask the questions up here, then we'll open it up to the audience, okay? Questions up here?
Statement, not necessarily
okay.
a question.
Trustee Stanton.
I know it was said by Mr. Compline that the hours of 2 to 5 seemed fine, but 73% of the people that were in that 2 to 5 range say they want it increased from 12 to, I think, 6. So I think it would be appropriate to increase the hours from the 12 to 6, from 2 to 5.
Okay. Other questions up here? All right, at this time, we'll open it up to the audience. If you'd please come forward, we need your name and address for the record. And if we could, we know there are a lot of feelings one way or another. We would just
Yeah.
ask, excuse me, we
I'm
would
sorry.
just ask that, try not to repeat too many of the same things.
Right.
Your name and
My name
address,
is Kerry
please.
Benora, 450 Alcoa Lane.
Thank
I want to
you.
ask you a question. Why do we have to expand or have any parking at all, overnight at all in the streets? Where they have driveways, why don't they park there?
Well, unfortunately, a lot of people nowadays have more cars than can fit into a driveway.
It creates crime and stuff, and people break in the car. In any other village, they have between 2 and 5, you're not allowed to park at all, except for like an emergency, like if you have a flat tire. And I strongly disagree with the parking in Alcoa. Creates more traffic. They have driveways, they could use them.
Okay.
And if it's for those apartment complexes, don't they have parking there? Because they're always walking over the street. We went through this in 2006 with this permit stuff.
Okay, thank you, sir. Did you wish to say anything else?
And also, I think they shouldn't allow parking between Morton and Spring Mill and Alcoa Lane to cause a traffic hazard because the cars are too close in an intersection. People are coming in and out of Alcoa because it's a very congested street and it creates traffic hazard. If they're going to maybe prevent parking between Morton and Spring Mill, or, yeah, and I'd be happy for that. It's just a hazard, I think. They got driveways, like I said.
Okay.
Or they could have overflow maybe at the police station or something. There's no parking where the residents live in apartments and all that, or condos.
All right, thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Next.
Good evening. My name is Nihad Ibrahimidzic. I reside at 460 Alcoa Lane. Regarding this whole permit parking, I really don't have an issue as far as parking itself goes. I've been here for about 4.5 years. The issue I do notice is that the parking that's there right now for the enforcement, there is no enforcement. I left cars there, I've never received a ticket, which is good. I do notice a huge issue with, I believe it's Steeple Hill, the apartment complex behind, where they tend to flood Alcoa Lane as far as starting from, I believe it's Olive, going on down. And every morning I walk my dog out there, and summertime especially, it's, as I'm walking my dog, it's enough I got to pick up after him, but I'm picking up trash that these people leave out there. So if they do expand this permit parking, I just politely ask that it's enforced so that people that don't reside in in our neighborhood don't park there.
I think that's one of the things that the police chief has been taking notes on, and I would think you'll see some more enforcement back over there.
But Trustee Mills, if I could, is your car registered to your address?
It is.
Then they would probably not have given you a ticket.
Okay.
Okay?
All right.
It's really, we know that the parking permit area was established for people who don't live in that area not to park there. But occasionally, if a resident does and they forget to call the police department and say, I need to park on the street overnight, which we allow for the neighbors who live in that area, then the officer might use his discretion and say, oh, I see by the registration that it's from this address, we're fine, we'll let it go.
Okay. And another thing, it might go with this, it might not. Right off a corner of Washington and Alcoa, so that would be the north end side with the street dead ends. There's a fence there that prevents basically anybody from going. So the people that live out on the other side, they've knocked that fence down or the board squeezed through. Now there's a door built there where, you know, it's a traffic area at this point. And like I just stated, it seems that all the residents, from what I've noticed there, like Carrie noted, they park in their driveways, garages, whether it be, and most of the parking I do see is from the residents of those apartment complexes that pretty much flood that street nightly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Staff, that's one thing that we did ask you to look into at the last meeting, too, was about that gate. What have you found now for the audience?
What we found is a lot of, it appears that the village at one point decided there wouldn't be a gate. From what Peter found, it wasn't on the original site plan. It wasn't part of any of the conditions of the original approval. It was something that just was decided because the code separately requires there to be a fence separating apartments, at that time apartments, which are commercial use, from residential. Not residential from residential, by the way. So there was a solid fence there. It was constantly being vandalized, constantly being knocked down. We were constantly having to take the boards, the property management company, the boards to court. And it dates well back. Mr. Hewing gave us some letters that date back into the middle 90s and before. Sometime in the 2003-4 timeframe, a gate was allowed to be put in. So it's something that we're looking on. We have talked to both of the property management companies about maintaining the fence, about they need to come up with a plan for how they're going to repair/replace, and we've given them a time frame to do that. Not the repair/replace, but to come up with a plan and to show us what they're going to do.
Okay, so sometime in the future, we could be looking at that gate being
Well,
removed then?
I don't think that there's been a decision made on whether or not the village even has the
It's on
true
private
enforcement
property,
and
yeah.
the right to ban someone from accessing public property. It's their private, if it was private property abutting private property, no gates. That's easy, because you don't have the right to ingress and egress property, your property, from somebody else's. But public property to private property, that's another question, and legal's doing research on that now.
Okay. All right, so unfortunately, we can't answer that question
And Trustee
right
Mills,
now.
that's why I refer back to the 1968 or 9 approval of the project that usually, at least today, for the last 20-plus years, the village has put conditions in, site plans, or added things onto the site plan if there were requirements, and this one doesn't have anything like that.
We went through some of this, Bill, you probably remember this too, back with Partridge Hill. They had a problem with the fence over there many years ago, and I don't remember how that, I can't remember how that one was solved too, so there may be some similarities between those.
Yeah, some of the corrections, some of the things that have happened in the past have been done voluntarily by property owners, and everyone's figured out an answer that they were all satisfied with and done it, not necessarily the village being able to require something. That's kind of the difference here.
All right, Trustee Palafis, you had a question?
Have we changed our policy regarding non-resident butting up to resident in terms of the fence?
I don't know that the village has ever had a policy.
Oh.
Okay, I mean,
But you said-
obviously on this one, Mr. Burchard, my predecessor, and the staff and potentially the board that was in place then did want there not to be a gate at some point.
I think if the
I'm not
site-
sure what authority they did
If
that
the
on.
site plan had a fence, we should adhere to the site plan having a fence, and the gate goes away.
But as I said, Peter, did the site plan even show a fence?
No, we don't even have a physical site plan, and actually, the earliest records that I found from around 1970, 71 actually talked about an opening. There wasn't even a gate or a fence at the dead end of the public street. There was a fence between the apartments and the homes as a visual barrier, but that dead end of the street, there was a mention about putting a post or a bollard in the middle of the opening so vehicles couldn't drive through. There was not even a talk of an actual solid fence or anything at that time. But again, this goes back to the very early 70s, and unfortunately our records and the documentation that was done and the types of plans we had back then are not quite the same as we've had in the last couple decades.
I just think if there was a fence and we can't find documentation taking the fence out, it goes back in.
But
Just
if
my
they don't have
perspective.
documentation, the fence even being there, it sounds like.
Right, but it was there. So, and the rest of the fence is still there. So if we go by that premise, you can knock the whole fence down, right? I don't think anybody wants that.
A separate issue from what we're dealing with
Right,
on this
I know,
right
I'm
now,
just
though.
saying.
Okay, let's keep it back to the actual parking permit areas too for right now, so we can get something decided on that. Somebody else wish to make any comments on this? Come on up. I'll get to you next.
Okay, if I have a relative.
Address.
Pardon?
Name and address, please.
Karen Murphy, 855 Washington.
Thank you.
If I have a relative that comes and spends the night once in a while, and she parks on the street because she has trouble backing out of my driveway, do I have to call the police and tell them that
Yes,
she'll be there, and that way they won't ticket her?
yes.
Okay.
We'll just pick a phone call and tell, you'll need her license plate number,
Right,
that
that's what I
type
was
of
wondering.
information, and that's how it's handled now in the
Okay.
existing permit area.
Okay, thank you.
I think there was another solution too, and that's that the homeowner puts their car outside and has the guest stay.
She's on the
Correct.
driveway,
Okay.
yeah.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
Lori Langowski, 575, excuse my cold, Alcoa Lane. I just want to comment on the excessive noise when they're parking in the middle of the night, also from the apartment buildings. And I know you said not to repeat, but I'm tired of picking up other people's trash. And that I've been there 13 and a half years. It's always been nice till they started parking there.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? Come on up.
Hello, my name is Krzysztof Zapal. I live on 545 Alcoa Lane, and exactly I started calling about the extension permit sign on the Alcoa Street because we just moved in like February. We just bought the house, Hoffman Estate, and we think gonna be nice and quiet because it's far away from Chicago. And couple months I started calling and nothing. We're just asking about permission parking only for residential, and we're asking about couple houses. We're not asking like 4, 5, 7 streets around our, because I live exactly, the cars park on mostly in front of our house. So I have 2 small kids, young kids, 4 and 6, and I scared about my kids and about my family. I'm sorry for my accent, but
Doing fine.
Yeah, fine.
but what I try to say, and I talk to my neighbors, and that's why they come with me. Who is interesting, they come over. If not, if somebody live like far away, like end of the Alcoa Lane, so they don't care who park in front of my house, like 6, 7, 8 cars every night. They coming for my driveway, they turn off on my driveway, they parking like 3 days. Police said 3 days, I can call. I don't want to call for police because, the guy parking like 3 days and 2 hours. So I have family, I want to spend time with family. I don't want to watching the guys, because if I gonna watch the guys, so they watching me, and what are you looking for the guys? So I want to be okay for everybody, but some people are not, and they feel like they driving on my driveway, they come to my driveway, and I feel like they are, Thank you, and
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Seems like we have everybody here who's in favor of the expanded permits. Anybody up on the board here have anything to say now? If no one else is in the audience? Anyone want to make a motion?
No, someone
Oh,
else.
all right, come on up. Once again, name and address.
Scott Ewing, 540 Alcoa Lane. I just want to reserve an opportunity to discuss the fence and the gate. I'm in favor of where you seem to be tracking towards the parking permits, and if that's the way this tracks, I don't need to make any further comments, but I do want an opportunity.
We need to get a little bit more
speak.
information on that from research, so.
I still would like to have an opportunity
Sure.
to talk to that today.
When this comes forward again, once we get something, we can let,
No, he said he wanted to talk today.
you want to talk today about it?
Yes.
Okay, come on.
We can break this up again, or do you want to do parking permits?
No, let's finish this up. Get it out in the open there.
Again, Scott Ewing, 540 Alcoa Lane. Mayor McLeod, Manager Norris, trustees, appreciate the opportunity to address you on this. My issues, assuming that there's going to be a parking permit program passed, I'm going to be fine with that. But my issues continue to revolve around the gate and the fence and the egress and ingress between the residential areas and the residents that have houses. And I'd just like to point out a couple things in regard to the general meeting minutes that was published, and I just took some notes of this when I picked them up here today as I came in, that I take exception to. We talk about the fact that limited information was found on the history of the gate at Washington Boulevard and village files except for ongoing maintenance concerns and code violations. However, fences are required to screen adjacent uses, and such fences must meet the code, et cetera, et cetera. It goes on to say, our record suggests that the gate was installed as a solution to an ongoing problem with damage to the fence by residents desiring to access Washington Boulevard. Now, I'd just like to remind everybody that when I was here last month, I presented to the trustees a memorandum from June 27th, 1990, by Robert O. Blum, Senior Building Inspector, Department of Code. And I'd like to read from that again. The erection of the fence was proposed in 1969 and accepted by the village that summer, with the understanding that this would act as a deterrent for other villagers entering Steeple Hill and using their parks and pools, and conversely, the villagers would be free from residents and traffic generated by the apartment complex using Washington Street as a shortcut to schools and other facilities. Now, I know from moving here in 1980 and talking to neighbors that have since moved, but were here at the time that this proposal was approved by the three parties in 1969, and I was told that absolutely that was the agreement between Steeple Hill, the residents, and the village. And so I just don't understand how, I mean, I can understand how maybe somebody's got problems looking back into their records, but certainly this record clearly defines what the intended agreement was, and that was exactly what was conveyed to me by other long-term residents when we moved here in 1982. So I take issue to that, and in addition to that, you know, there was no, I want to just remind everybody, there was no public notice to our residents on Alcoa Lane homeowners in 2000 and whatever it was in the beginning of that when that gate was allowed to be put up. There was no consideration for the residents. This is after 30-something years of the residents coordinating and working with the village and the code department to try and keep the fence in repair, back and forth, and I come back from vacation one day in August, and I got a gate all of a sudden in the fence. Had nothing to do with it. And my last point, and I just be concise, is that I certainly appreciate if the board is willing to give us the permit parking, because that will help the situation, but it will not solve the problem. And when the fence was up, we had very little parking problems, and we had only minor problems with the people who would hurdle the fence going to and from the community or the school, whatever. We've always had a problem with the timeline involved in repairing the fence, and I understand that that's a burden on the staff of the village to have to press that. But I think it's the least that the commissioners could do is to put that back into what was originally agreed to by all three parties and put this thing to bed, both items, the parking permit and the fence not having a gate. And the Steeple Hill complex should be required to repair that fence as often as is required. And if they don't want to spend the money to fortify that fence in a way that makes it more difficult for them to kick it out, then I guess they would have to come back and fix it more often. That's all.
Thank you. Staff, do we have a copy of that memo that he's referring to?
Right here.
Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
all right.
We had lengthy discussions about this at the staff level. Because three parties agreed in 1990 to do something, what happens if one of the parties, and I don't mean the village or the homeowners, no longer want to do that, or as of 2003 or 4, when the gate in no longer wanted to be a party to it? There is no written signed contract or agreement. There is no ordinance. There is no condition of approval that we can find, and we're still searching microfilm and everything else. It makes it more difficult from an enforcement standpoint. The question becomes ultimately, and this is why I said legal is researching this, what is the village's legal basis to order a private property owner to either have or not have a gate? Now, at the end of the right-of-way, the village could do something. Okay, we could do that, but there's also inherent liability with putting obstructions in right-of-way. And all sorts of case law on that if you knowingly put an obstruction in a right-of-way and somebody runs up Washington Boulevard and runs into it, we're liable. So that's why I said we have legal looking at it. I understand the commitments that were made. I'm not sure what legal basis they had to make those commitments then, and whether or not the village can still enforce them now. And I understand, believe me, I understand. And I understand where Trustee Palofis is coming from. But we need a little bit more time, legal and such, to see how we can do that.
Trustee Palofis.
I don't know if I agree. I don't know about the legal side, but there's certain courts in the village that have a guardrail. So if somebody drives through that guardrail and into the lake, we're liable. Because that's
There's a difference
our guardrail.
between-
I'm just saying it's similar.
There's a difference between something that's contained in standard engineering practice on curves and those type of things than putting a barrier up. If you put a bollard up like Peter referenced and somebody runs through that, we're liable for that too.
Right, but there's no need for a boulder, where
That wouldn't
people
do
can't
anything. That
drive.
wouldn't
Right.
stop anybody.
So, I think if they don't do it, which it sounds like they probably won't, there's no money that they have to do that. They're not going to take litigation against us if they don't have the financial means either. Not that we shouldn't do it. But I'm just saying it's a quality of life thing for these residents.
I agree
And actually, if the
completely.
gate wasn't there, we probably wouldn't need the extent of the parking permit. Just my,
I agree completely
common
with that,
sense,
too.
maybe. I don't know. We've talked about it an hour longer than we should have. The right thing to do, I think, is just to put the fence back in.
But of course, it's not on the agenda this evening.
Understood. I thought it was going to be.
That's why we're here again.
Right.
We have it because we have you on the agenda for the parking conditions, for the permits.
With all due respect, the meeting.
All right, if somebody's going to speak, you're going to have to come up to the microphone. Thank you.
With all due respect, the meeting a month ago said that you were going to do a study involved in the parking permits, you were going to send out surveys, and you would do research and come
Right.
prepared to discuss the subject of the gate.
But
Both
unfortunately,
things
they
were-
don't have all the research done yet on the gate, from what we're being told.
Well, it would have been nice to know that.
I
Like,
agree.
I come every week, every month to meetings.
I agree,
for-
and it was in the packet that we received for tonight. That's why we're only doing this part. Okay, so to deal with what we have on the agenda, I would look for a motion if any. Yes, sir.
I'm Steve Haney, 560 Alcoa Lane. What was the reason they put the gate up for? I don't expect you to know that answer, but I did read something in some of the literature about how District 54 does not recognize this as a viable pathway for the children to be getting to school. Now, that's the only thing I could see would be a reasonable request to have that gate there for us to get the kids to school. It's not any shortcut to get to any stores, anything. It's not a convenient throughway except to get into our neighborhood and to the school. But then I read District 54 doesn't recognize it.
It doesn't qualify because it's not sidewalk all the way to be a school route.
Right.
According to people that live in that development, that inn, and the property manager, it's used as an access by kids who don't use the bus.
Right.
So while it may not meet the official guidelines to negate the bus, it still is used that way.
Well, this is where I don't
So
know
what
about-
we're trying to do, if I could try to help get this a little
That
bit further
would be
along, is
fine.
we're trying to get the association board and the property manager just to put a solid fence back up.
Right.
Okay? Because if they, as a private property owner, if they do it voluntarily, then this whole issue of whether or not there's legal standing, legal authority, our recourse is to start citing them into administrative adjudication. The question will be answered one way or another, whether or not we have the legal authority to do it. But if we can get them to voluntarily do it, then the issue's moot. In the meantime, while we're trying to nicely coerce them into doing it, saying everything that you're saying, sometimes not so nicely, we thought we should move ahead with the permit parking. Because this could take another couple more months working with that association, that board. We know from years of experience, and as do the neighbors. So that's kind of where we are.
Yeah, absolutely, and we're grateful for the parking permit. We're going to accept that fully and be happy about that. I just, not being a person of legal knowledge, I don't know if that would be something that could be thrown into the mix, the fact that, why did you put that gate up there in the first place?
They put it up because it was a maintenance headache and they didn't want to repair it any longer.
Okay. So,
To them, it was an easier solution.
okay.
Not that it was the right
And
right
they
one.
raise issues along the lines of, why do our kids have to walk farther to get to their schools? We pay taxes as much as anybody else. It's the same thing we hear. Why is one type of single-family residential housing being separated from another type of single-family residential housing? Race issues have been thrown in the village's face on this. And it's something that we have to pay attention to. So that's why I say we want to make sure what our legal basis is.
Yeah.
We want to make sure what our legal basis
I
is.
completely understand that.
Trustee Palafis.
I'm assuming that we'll keep something in items and review for.
I plan on
defense.
putting that, I was about
Okay.
to say that I do not want this to disappear.
Understood. In that case, I'll make a motion to approve option A.
Option A or B, you want to leave out the cul-de-sacs or leave them in?
The cul I don't really have an opinion. I think it's just easier to do it all, to be honest with you.
That's B.
25, B is 25 less homes that have the cul-de-sac, but we might as well do all of them. So that's why I'm saying option A would be.
Did anyone hear from the cul-de-sacs? I just was curious. Okay, because they seem to be the ones who didn't want it, so I
Right.
just wondered if they were here.
I would just hate to leave a loophole. So to me, option A was.
Okay.
You know, I like to seal cracks tight, so.
Noon to 6?
It may cause, so you have a motion
Versus 2 to
to
5.
approve option A, correct?
Yeah, option A with.
With the hours.
With
Midnight to 6.
midnight to 6.
Okay, do I have a second
I'll
to that
second that.
motion? Thank you.
Thank you. Take all the help I
And
can-
truthfully, I think if we leave out the cul-de-sacs, that could force problems over
Yeah,
there.
I agree.
All right, we have a motion right now to extend the parking permits to the entire area as outlined on option A, with the hours changing to 12 midnight to 6 a.m.
Right.
Any questions or comments regarding the motion?
I'll just say for the record that I would rather be with option B than A, but that's me.
Okay, thank you.
And if I do a nay vote, that's why.
It would go all the way down to Lawndale, including Lawndale. See where it's, the darker shading is? Takes in all of those homes. All right, seeing no other discussion on this, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
One, please note the one nay. And staff, please put under items in review regarding the fence and the gate for future meetings. Okay. Trustee Palafis.
Not to belabor, but the items in review, when it does come up, we'll notify the folks again.
I would
Okay.
ask staff to do that.
Beautiful.
If we don't know who you are because of attendance at meetings and speaking, Peter, do you have a pad that you can do a sign-up sheet? If you would see Peter, or Peter will step outside so he can get names and phone numbers or email addresses from everybody. Thank you.
Okay?
Is that required if I already spoke?
Pardon?
Do I need to sign that also?
No, they've got your name, Mr. Ewing.
Both times.
Yeah. All right, we will move on to new business this evening. Request acceptance, a Transportation Division monthly report.
So moved.
I'll second.
Any questions or comments on transportation? Anything transportation wishes to highlight? Nothing. Barrington Road interchange is moving along.
That's right.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the ayes have it. President's report.
Nothing else, Trustee Mills?
We have no other to come before this committee, and we'll be putting an item in review regarding this fence. If there's nothing else to come before this committee tonight, I would look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second.
Real
All
quick,
those in
I'm sorry. Joe is outside, not me.
Okay.
So,
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the ayes have it. We are adjourned.
yeah. Right.
Anybody need a respite? All right, I'd like to call to order the Planning, Building, and Zoning Committee on January 8th, 2018 for the Village of Hoffman Estates. May we have a roll call, please?
Chairman Stanton.
Present.
Vice Chairman Arnett.
Present.
Trustee Mills.
Present?
Trustee Newell.
Present.
Trustee Palafis.
Present.
Trustee Gata.
Present.
Mayor McLeod.
Present.
We have a quorum. Looking for approval of the minutes of December 11th, 2017.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Anybody notice any corrections or deletions that need to be made? Hearing none, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Old business, request by the Hoffman Estates Park District for reconsideration of the site plan approval for community garden plots at Chino Park.
So moved.
I'll second.
Wait,
The
wait.
The motion maker
wait a
has to
minute.
be someone who voted
Approved,
against it.
denied. Yes.
In that case, I'll remove my second.
I will make a motion for reconsideration.
Second.
Sorry about that. Fast on the trigger over here.
Do we have a petitioner that wants to approach us?
Was there a vote?
Well, do we need to vote
have to
first
take
on
a
this?
vote.
To reconsider it.
See if
Okay.
I can reconsider.
All right, let's take a roll call vote on that.
Chairman,
Call is for what?
To reconsider.
Reconsider, okay.
Chairman Stanton.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Arnett.
Aye.
Trustee Mills.
Aye.
Trustee Newell.
Aye.
Trustee Palafis.
Aye.
Trustee Gata.
Aye.
Mayor McLeod.
Aye.
All right, so now we are reconsidering. Does the petitioner wish to address us? Dean?
Good evening.
Could you give
Dean
your
Bostrom,
name and, yeah, go ahead.
Executive Director, Hoffman Estates Park District. At the December 11th.
I think I need your address as well.
Okay, well, 2030 Hassel Road,
Thank you.
also 1685 Higgins Road.
Okay.
Spend more time there. At the December 11th PB&Z meeting, kind of the takeaways from the discussions that were held that evening addressed the unsightliness of the of garden plots, overuse of the park or congestion, traffic, wild animals, garden plots not being an appropriate use for public parks, why the Chino location, regulations regarding use of the garden plots. And at the December 11th meeting, there wasn't a formal presentation that provided more specifics regarding community involvement in this project. So going down that list, regarding the unsightliness, the proposed location, there's a fire station directly to the north, which blocks the view. To the west is a elementary school, a school building. And to the south, the property, there's a rise in the elevation so that the garden plot area is not visible from the south and even to the southeast because of the change in elevation where there's a rise in the property, which really leaves the area to the east, which is Flagstaff. There's 4 homes that sit between Flagstaff and Illinois that have a visibility of where the proposed area was. We've gone back to the drawing board and with our Director of Parks have proposed to plant arborvitaes, which are a type of evergreen that will grow up, they're designed as a type of a screening evergreen. They would be planted at approximately 3-foot intervals, so there would be an immediate impact with an approximate 5-foot height as well. Also, this area, while it is visible, it is higher than the area that's along Illinois, so that you'll even have a heightened impact by the arborvitaes. The garden plots, the width of the garden plots is wouldn't exceed, we said 70 feet, but it's really, if you take 15 feet and you take the 3 2-foot intervals, it comes out to 66 feet, so that the arborvitaes would cover the complete width of the garden plots. So really those 4 homes that are visible of that area would be screened from the garden plots. And typically most things within a garden are going to be less than 5 feet. Arborvitaes are very aggressive evergreen too. They grow, they'll grow to 25 feet tall. That's what's being proposed to help visually block the unsightliness of the garden plots. Also, and related, and I'll talk about that, the regulations, we're using the same regulations that are adopted by the village as far as making sure that if there's unsightly weeds, if they're unattended, you have a copy of those regulations that we can go in and we would make sure that we would take over so that that wouldn't remain unsightly. Also, at the end of the year, all the plots would be removed. So you really just have that major growing season, which would probably be June through, September or so, where the plants start to get higher. As far as overuse of the park, congestion, Chino Park's only programmed 2 to 3 days a week. We have parks that are a typical park with ball fields in it are programmed 6 to 7 days a week, 5 to 6 days a week. Chino Park is not one of our heavily used parks by any stretch of the imagination. There's also ample parking. One of the things that leads to congestion in a park is when there's not ample parking and you have a lot of parking that becomes street parking and neighbors sense the congestion from all the cars that are on the lot. The parking lot there has always provided ample parking, not only for the ball fields but for the garden plots as well. Regarding traffic, athletic fields typically create more traffic problems from a park district's perspective other than our facilities, but in a park use, the ball fields create more traffic problems, and traffic is usually viewed as a high volume of cars over a short period of time. So when you have 2 teams play each other, you have 15 players on each team, then you have an overlapping game, you can potentially have 60 cars that are created by a single ball field use. What we're proposing is 16 garden plots and then in-ground, and then the 4 ADA. Those should be used not where it's a team effort. It's individuals that have the garden plots. Some may come on weekday mornings, some may come in the afternoons, some may come on weekends. So there's really not going to be this high impact of traffic that would typically you'd see in a ball field type use. So we really feel that the spread out use of the garden plots over time will have a minimal impact on traffic in the surrounding area. As far as wild animals, 2 things. First, the village has 2 garden plots. One of them is 50% larger than the one that we have. The other one's a comparable size. It's 20 including the 4 ADA. There haven't been reported issues with the wild animals, squirrels and skunks and other type things. Plus, there's numerous park districts that have garden plots, and it's not an issue that's been reported by any of the other park districts as far as the use of the garden plots, as far as an accelerated number of wild animals that have congregated as a result of the garden plots. As far as appropriate use of public parks, on a national level, there's a big environmental green initiative. Everybody's going green. Garden plots fit right in with that. There's a big surge in the use of public parks for community gardens, particularly when you can tie them to areas that are close to multifamily homes that don't have the property themselves, which is one of the reasons why this location was determined. But also, in addition to the environmental or the green movement, people are more health conscious, and eating vegetables, what better things than homegrown vegetables than consistent with eating healthy, and also the exercise that comes with gardening. So it's really consistent with those 3 themes that are a major movement in Parks and Rec, across the country. As far as community gardens go, in another Schaumburg, Arlington Heights, Hanover Park, St. Charles, Geneva, Cary, Fox Valley, Rockford. Chicago's got 70 of them, separate garden plot areas. They're really scattered throughout park districts in the suburban areas, and it's something that I think you'll continue to see that will grow. I know in Hoffman, they've been here. I've been here over 20 years, and they were here when I got here for 20 years, and they've been a huge success here. It's one of the things that we had in our master plan was identified, because I think that within the first hour they're all sold out, so that there's a limited opportunity to be able to have garden plots in this community particularly if you don't have a home that has that opportunity. So we're looking to provide that opportunity on a limited basis. But we think it's something that will be in high demand within the community. Why the Chino Park location? I mentioned before about the multifamily housing. I think the parking issues that you just talked about was a high concentration of multifamily. There's 2 blocks away from there. There's a large area that runs from the police station all the way to Roselle Road that is largely multifamily. We also wanted to pick a location that would have minimal visual impact. The location, the closest homes are over twice the distance of what the standard that the village established as far as locations for their garden plots. We also wanted to make sure there was ample parking so that we wouldn't have cars parking on the street. We needed to have a water source, which there is a water source. And we were also, in revisiting the site, planting the arborvitaes to help further screen that area, to create kind of a green fence to separate the garden plots from the residents that are to the east there. As far as the regulations I referenced, you have a copy of those. We modeled them after you guys. You guys have got a great program, so we didn't feel like we needed to reinvent the wheel. So those are in place to make sure that we help maintain the garden plots and that they're used appropriately. And then lastly, community involvement. Linda Dressler, who's a local realtor, approached us back in 2016, in the fall of 2016, about doing a community-based grant program called Placemakers, creating places in the community where people would congregate and meet your neighbors, kind of a social opportunity. We had discussion, we talked about the garden plots. We didn't meet the grant cycle before, and I know village staff was involved because when we talked about the Chino location, was making sure that the water access was there, which has been confirmed that it is, and that's part of our budget, that we would bring that water source to the gardens. She has since secured a $3,500 grant that would be applied towards the asphalt ADA path that would provide access, because if we're doing a new amenity, it needs to be fully accessible, which the ADA planters would be, and then that asphalt would be. So the $3,500 would help offset those costs. That grant's been secured, and it's obviously contingent on the village's approval. And finally, we were approached by Eagle Scout candidate Alexander Blackshear, who's right here in our audience, as an Eagle Scout project to build the ADA compliant planters. He did a lot of research and a lot of work. I can have him come up and maybe briefly explain what he's been doing with that project. Just briefly, talking about the fundraising, the detail that goes into the planters to make sure that they are accessible, and that what's all involved with that. So maybe I can just introduce Alexander, if you want to come up and just give a brief overview on what you're proposing.
Do you want to give your name and address for the record, please?
Yeah, Alexander Blackshear, 1703 Glen Lake Road. Just a quick summary. I'm Alexander Blackshear. The ADA garden plots are my Eagle project. So kind of what they are just garden plots that are approximately like 30 inches tall, make it handicap accessible and not just people with wheelchairs, it's just people for the disabilities. So.
Would they also be 15 by 15?
I think so.
No. The size of the planters.
Oh.
The actual planters. Tell them how big the planters that you're building are.
They are, so what I remember, so kind of like how, with the whole.
6 feet, 5 feet?
Yeah, thank you. Ooh. I got a lot of stuff today.
It's been a long meeting.
Yes, it's been a long meeting. So.
Be up here.
That's right. I'll go sit by your dad.
So they're basically 6 feet by approximately 3 feet. And those are just the dimensions of the garden plots.
And you're going to have 4 of them?
4, yes, 4 of them, which was originally supposed to be at Chino Park, but, after this, who knows? So that's all there is to it. If there's any questions.
Okay, so in total length, it would be 12 by 12?
No.
Or is it 6 by 6?
It'll be 6 by 3.
3.5 feet wide by 6 feet long by 3 feet high.
Okay, so each one is 3 by 3? Is that how it works?
Got 3.5 feet wide.
6 feet long by 3 feet wide.
Okay.
And then so
So they're not
the width
squares,
has
it's
to be such that
rectangular.
somebody can
Okay.
go around the entire diameter of it and be able to reach the different points. So it's only 6 feet long, 3 feet wide, and then sits up 30 inches. And what it is the underneath has access so that you can pull up a wheelchair underneath it. So it has a. Okay. I'm sorry. It has a support system underneath it so that you can actually go underneath it. So it's not a solid wall, 30 inches. It's actually he went through a lot of research, I think, from someplace in Florida that you determined?
Yeah,
Tallahassee, where they've kind of got a model planter. So he's designing them after this planter, but they're 6 feet long, 3 feet wide, 30 inches tall, and there's 4 of them.
Dean, I have a question for you. I know the plants that you have here will cover the garden plots, the 16 garden plots, but you didn't extend it to the ADA ones too, and I assume the residents that were complaining about the unsightliness of the garden plots would prefer that also cover the ADA ones as well. I guess, is that a possibility?
Yeah, it's a possibility, yes. We could extend those to block the planters as well.
Okay. Anybody else questions up here? All right, anybody from the audience that wishes to address us on this topic? Mr. Frank?
Ed Frank, 694 Illinois Boulevard in Hoffman Estates.
Thank you, sir.
I was a Boy Scout too. As a matter of fact, I still have my, my 2 handbooks. I have my merit badge there, and I have, believe it or not, the neckerchief from the 1964 National Jamboree in Valley Forge. We won't be denying this young man the opportunity to earn his merit badge, his Eagle Scout, by denying this request. There are many projects that he can undertake. There are a great many of them. They're talking about putting a lot of bushes and stuff around this particular plot. Yeah, and they can do that. They'll also be cutting off half the light that goes into it because there's buildings on the other 2 sides of it.
Well, they'll be cutting out the east light, but they
What's
won't be
that?
cutting out the south light. They'll be cutting out the east light.
As far as the parking is concerned, there's no parking allowed in front of the school. There's no parking allowed in front of the firehouse, and I don't believe there's parking on one side of Bodie Road in that area. So there's really no parking place. The Park District talks about all the other park districts not having any problems with animals. Who talks about the bad stuff? You only talk about the good stuff. I can show you pictures of my backyard right now with footprints from animals all over the place because of the snow. I can take the picture because of the snow. Unfortunately, everything began to melt this afternoon. I wasn't going to go out. The animals are out there. They're going to be out there. That particular park happens to be the landing place for about 60 or 75 wild geese, too. They sit there all the time. My wife and I often wonder how the kids can go out there, play soccer, play ball or whatnot, and go home with clean shoes on. There is an animal problem there. And I do wish that you would take that into consideration. We have coyotes there. We have coyotes in the area. As a matter of fact, if you watch the news on television, you'll see where a coyote attacked a dog in somebody's backyard, not in Hoffman Estates, but a different town. But we have coyotes in Hoffman Estates.
I saw one the other day.
And we have them in that area. Fighting trouble. They can put all the fences they want around this garden plot. I live on about a quarter of an acre. It's chain linked all around. And it's still, I can show you all the animal tracks, they manage to get in. Squirrels can jump 10 feet. Not high, but 10 feet across. They can climb up chain link fences. I've seen them.
I've got a chain link fence too, Ed, and they go in my backyard every day.
Yeah, you see them. You see the squirrels, don't you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Squirrels, skunks,
And this is just
possum.
skunks, everything else. Exactly. Unfortunately, my next door neighbor left a shed for his back, in the back, the door to a shed in the backyard open. And he's wondering how we can get rid of the skunks that moved in. I told him he's got to call the villager. They'll be able to give him the name of a removal. I'm not against farming, believe me. But remember, Hoffman Estates is the 5th largest community, land-wise, in the state of Illinois. I wonder if the Park District has ever thought of going to the Forest Preserve District and saying, hey, can we use a part of the open stuff for a farm? This is all part of it. There are alternatives that the Park District can look at without going into a neighborhood and disrupting it with a lot of animals and other problems. I urge you, please, turn this request down. Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the audience that wishes to address us on this topic? Yes, please, come on up.
Hello, I'm Van Burns from 705 Evanston Street. Ours is the one house that does face the garden plot area. I don't think as I read into some of the old surveys that were done, I think there was a phase 1, a phase 2, phase 3, depending on how far this went. I know that if we put the garden plots back behind the fire station, that probably wouldn't be such a bad idea, as long as we don't end up with lots of different colored tarps, people wanting to put up shade cloth because it's too sunny in that area. The only other thing that I would think of is that putting up the arborvitae is probably going to be more of a security issue with the school. Kind of hides things back over in that area. Might not be the greatest thing. You guys have had a long night, and I don't want to talk your ear off, but I look at like I said, I look at that every day, and I was a Boy Scout of Troop 97 back in the day, but that's one of the things of living in Hoffman. I know everybody wants to have a nice yard, somewhere nice to live, and I said we take care of our grass, we mow, take care of bushes, all that kind of stuff. I got a feeling that putting that up out in the field, it may not do great for property values. It's just another eyesore. Mr. Frank did bring up the geese problem. I mean, not a problem, but there are hundreds of geese that'll land at that park. They land in the fall. There are quite a bit. I was over there with my brother walking around carefully. So that is another thing that will be over there. The thing that also has me concerned is, as I read into this, there's phase 2, phase 3, which would be removing the ball diamond that's there. And I mean, everybody goes and, there are people that do play softball there, because I do watch them all summer. I mean, not saying constantly, but that is another thing that I don't want to see disappear, because that's, you know, one of the things of having parents go over and teach their kids how to play baseball. If we take that down, that would be and that's well out into the middle of the park area. So I would not like to see that happen, get too much expansion on. If they do a certain project, we probably could get away with it as long as it's not unsightly.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Jim, you have a comment on that?
Just to say that the only thing that's being requested now is the garden plots. Any other changes to Chino Park under our lease intergovernmental agreement with the Park District would have to come back to the village board for approval.
And that's a condition.
And that's,
in this
well,
too.
that's not only a condition here, it's also part of our
Yeah.
agreement.
Mr. Bostrom, did you want to come back up?
One of the things with where the 16 spots are, it also provides us the ability, where we showed where we had that, there was the opportunity to put 8 additional, like for community type things. By putting the arborvitae there, it provides us opportunities to potentially expand if there was, and that's all conditional, but keep that east of the west of the arborvitae without impacting the ball fields.
So
it provides
south of where you have them, would have them now, is that what you're saying?
Yes, yeah, so it would provide us that ability to keep the ball fields intact and still be able to expand, but keep it west of the arborvitae.
Okay, understood.
And I think the parking lot is actually owned by the village as part of the Children's Advocacy Center. I think it's fairly ample parking, because I know the baseball team is parked there and there's still plenty of parking available.
There are 9 regular spots, and it looks like 2 ADA spots on that side.
Yeah, directly adjacent to the garden plots.
Okay, anyone else from the audience that wishes to address us? that has not already addressed us? Anybody else with any questions up here? Yes, trustee Palafis.
I just like to add, we have the same garden plots on a village parcel up north next to Fire Station 23, and I don't observe any of the problems that were discussed. If anything, I think it helps property value. It helps community. It's not unsightly. Actually, it looks pretty cool. And it's 1.5 times the size of what they're asking for. And there's no barriers.
Do you have a big park there next to it, though, that would house the geese?
No, well, actually, there is a
There's
pretty big
about
landing
4
spot
acres
for
of
geese.
vacant property right next to it.
Yeah, there's
That the village owns also.
no ballpark, but there was supposed to be a swimming pool.
Years
Not to bring up a sore
Which
spot.
they never put in.
That's
huh?
right. Just thought I'd throw that one out. You guys are all
That,
back
that
there.
sounds like my neighborhood, too.
Yeah.
Yes,
Anyway,
trustee
just
Mills.
saying.
Well, I do appreciate the Park District working with us on this. There were some concerns and questions, and in my mind, quite a few of those have been answered in this. And plus, with the condition that it cannot be expanded beyond this without approval. And one thing about the geese, they put those arborvitaes in there, that's a deterrent for geese, because they're afraid of animals hiding behind the bushes. So that's one thing might help. And unfortunately, we do have skunks, coyotes everywhere in town. The one walked right by my office the other day, so we see 'em
Coyote
all-
or skunk?
Coyote. We've had skunks all everywhere. But that's all I wanted to say.
Actually, you kind of want the coyotes to kill some of those skunks.
I
and other
agree.
Problems. All right, hearing nothing else up here, I think we have a motion in the second. No, we don't have a motion? Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the proposed development of the garden plots. Second the motion.
Okay, I guess all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. All right, let's go on to our next topic, which is new business. Request by, I may kill this name here, Tej Hotel Corporation for a special use and site plan amendment to extend the deadlines for completion of exterior work at Country Inn and Suites.
So moved.
I'll second.
Thank you. Questions? Yes, trustee Mills.
One of the items they want delayed until September of 2019 is the exterior pro-ledge stonework. Is that strictly decorative? It has nothing to do with the quality of the walls or that, right?
Right, what they did is they painted the old walls the proper colors for the new hotel brand. The hotel brand was felt that was acceptable as a short-term solution, and they actually granted approval for the owner to have additional time. It really was an expense that they, again, they had some cost overruns, and they were looking at something that could possibly be delayed until they could get up and running and generate some revenue.
Well, as long as it's just decorative, that was my concern.
Yeah, it's not a structural issue at all. It's really just the appearance of the building. But it was obviously a part of the plans you approved. We included those in the packet. And it's something we, and I think the hotel brand are still requiring to happen eventually. They're just asking for more time.
Do they have a temporary occupancy right now?
They do have occupancy. They've had temporary. They maintained occupancy throughout the entire construction. That was some of their lenders' requirements. They could not shut down completely.
So they're having paying customers in there now, too?
Yes, yes.
Okay, because I've heard it advertised, that's why I was
Yes, they do,
curious.
yes.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board here? Yes, trustee Gata.
Do you know what? The thing is that when they did purchase this, and according to the lender, that they didn't have to, they were requesting them not to turn it, shut it down completely. So they had revenue coming in. Why didn't they take care of the things that was outside? They've had all this time to do that.
Yeah, I can't explain all the delays. From a revenue standpoint, they only had a small wing of one floor, maybe a dozen or so rooms open, and they really weren't pushing marketing of it. While they were open to maintain their lenders' requirements, they were not trying hard to get a lot of people to stay there because most of the hotel was under renovation. So they really weren't in a position to host, 30, 40, 50 room nights. They really kind of just had it open and had a handful of visitors and guests throughout the construction process. So they really didn't get the full effect of the revenue from a hotel. I can't speak to the actual delays and why they didn't get some of the stuff done.
Is the
this fall.
petitioner in the audience?
They were supposed to be present, but I do not see them. Or, I'm sorry, yes, they do have a representative here.
Maybe you can come up and answer that question?
So, hello, my name is Darcy Kavanaugh, 2280 Barrington Road. I am the management representative for the property. So the question was about the, I'm sorry. What was
Asking about revenue stream as to why you weren't able to do it on time.
Yeah, so as he had stated, we were open, we had a small wing of maybe 10 rooms. When we weren't creating lots of revenue, we did have minimal occupancy. There's 119 rooms, all of them under renovation, and 8 rooms that were actually able to fit people. So, I mean, there really wasn't revenue coming in as far as that was concerned. Their revenue goals were to renovate the rest of the location so we can open it up for full occupancy and then finish that wing.
But you knew all that at the time that you purchased the property.
Right. Well, as the general manager, I've been here for 4 months, so all of that happened before I came. So what they were doing revenue-wise to build the property, they had their...
You're not privy to, okay, thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Okay, anyone else with any other questions here? All right, there is a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Yes, opposed.
Okay. The ayes have it, and the motion approved. 2, request by Rohrman Auto Group for a special use extension for temporary vehicle storage at 125 West Higgins Road.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Gentlemen, do you want to explain what's going here?
Sure. So the property owner, in this case, this is a little different than other ones we've had in the past. They were granted approval last year for a special use for two of the sites which are adjacent to store vehicles. They're not selling or doing any kind of service. They're just using them for storage from other dealerships. They were granted 6-month approval, which expired in November. Through our process of working with them and trying to get their applications in order, they honestly delayed for a few months until we could get it scheduled on this meeting. So they're asking to extend the special use approval until November of 2018, which was contemplated originally, but the board did not want to grant that long of a time in the beginning. They wanted the opportunity to re-review this every 6 months. One of the properties is under contract with another use, so that they're not asking for storage there. They have removed the vehicles from that property. So they're just looking for the 125 West Higgins property to be extended to November of 2018.
Pete, have they officially sold that property, 155?
It's not officially sold. We understand they're under contract for someone to potentially buy it, and that is an item that's being scheduled actually for a planning and zoning hearing in the near future. We think we're still working with that potential buyer.
Yeah, it's actually in the Department of Development Services
Yeah, I think
monthly report.
Couldn't remember off the top of my head what meeting we had it. Thank you.
So for all those that don't know who the company is that's supposed to be buying it, is Hertz.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
But that contract is still pending, obviously, village approvals once we get that scheduled.
It's subject to village zoning site plan approval. We don't have the right to approve their contract,
Right.
given other comments tonight.
All right, thank you. Anybody with questions up here regarding this? All those in favor of the motion in the second say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. 3, request by New Singular Wireless PCS LLC, commonly referred to as AT&T, for approval of an extension to an existing cellular antenna licensed at 1355 Westbury Drive.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion up here? Yes. Trustee Palafis.
Been waiting all night.
Yeah, oh, I knew that.
I think we could do better financially. AT&T is only Fortune number 9 on the Fortune 500 list. And it's not like they have many other water towers to reconsider, so just my 2 cents. I see the value in, the smaller antennas and the things they're trying to do, and I understand the data rates and the storage and all of that. I live up there. My AT&T reception is still bad, so approving it just prolongs that. But nevertheless, I think we could do better financially.
Anybody else with any discussion here? Okay. All those in favor of the motion and second, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it.
We're
I was
all
going to
looking at
say
you.
no, but,
We're all looking at you, waiting for it.
Jim talked me out of it earlier, so
Okay.
I voted yes. Note it for the first time.
4, request acceptance of the Department of Development Services monthly report for Planning Division.
So moved.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion on that? All those in favor of the motion and second, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. 5, request acceptance of Department of Development Services monthly report for Code Enforcement Division.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. 6, request acceptance of the Department of Development Services monthly report for economic development and tourism.
So moved.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. And looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I have one other.
Okay.
Just for the record, Amico is still not open out west. I drove by there, and it is now January.
Yes, that is true.
Any word?
We have no word.
Whatever it is.
Every time we reach out to the owner, they sound optimistic, and they give us a date in the near future, and we just don't see it come to fruition.
What was the time frame that we gave them to open?
It was in December.
Yeah.
I thought they were opening for sure in December, but I mean,
That's what they
There
said.
is legal action pending between the owner and people that he had
Oh.
talked to about operating the station.
So this could be a while.
our ability to cause something to happen isn't there.
Thank you.
Trustee Palafis?
I was going to add on to that the same level of activities happening with the Bergman House, which is nothing. Just saying.
But they wouldn't be doing construction now anyway.
I'm just saying, there's no updates.
The last we talked to Mr. Evans, M&I and Evans did reach agreement. It took them many more months than they originally contemplated. Evans has both a regular architect and a preservation specialist allegedly on board working on their plans. He told Peter last week that it would be very soon that we would see plans.
Do we have a deadline on that one?
Checks in the mail.
We can't. I mean, no. I mean, there's things in the agreement, but the agreement's between M&I and Evans, not the village, so.
If they sold the property, it's,
Immediate.
yeah.
I think the board deadline doesn't come into play until the end of July.
Okay, that's what I wanted
From
to
our
know.
standpoint, yeah.
Okay.
And I can forecast now that we'll be back in front of you asking you to extend it because they'll be in the middle of construction.
Thank you.
Anything in other than those two?
It's enough.
All right. Looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. We are adjourned. See you all next week.
Oh, God, we gotta do this